Master Your Destiny on 99 FM.
Welcome to MYD, Dr. Vaja Zatjirua. We are delighted to have you in
Thank you.
studio.
Thanks for having me here.
Let's start off with, help us understand, how does the brain work?
The brain is a very sophisticated piece of machinery, if you can call it that. And I think it's quite important at the start to address a few what I think are possible misconceptions in terms of how the brain works. First of all, I always like to start off with this, that we don't use 10% of our brains. We use the whole brain all the time. That's actually a very important thing to realize, that the brain is a very active organ and it's busy all the time. Okay? And various parts of the brain are perhaps more active during a certain activity than another part of the brain, but largely the brain works as a unit quite a lot and uses a large part of the brain most of the time.
Then what control do we have over the optimal functioning of our brains?
Another very important concept to also understand is that a lot of the functions of the brain are almost subconscious or involuntary. It's probably the more appropriate word, in terms of it does a lot of activities automatically without our conscious control. And these are range anything from the function of what we call the brain stem, which is the lower part of the brain, which regulates things like your blood pressure, your heart rate, your breathing, etc., which you don't think about, but that is sort of done by the brain subconsciously, to regulating the way you move, what motivates you, how you think, that you do subconsciously. And then we come to the more voluntary activity of the brain. That is the part of the brain that you decide how you use it and what to do with it. And that is largely in the superficial part of the brain called the cortex, where we have a high density of neurons, which are nerve cells in the brain, that then help us with doing voluntary activities. It's also quite important to realize that our understanding of that part of the brain and how that works is actually quite limited, surprisingly, in terms of what makes you decide to do something, and how do you think an idea, and how do you design a building, how do you write music. That part of the brain is less clearly understood in terms of how that works.
And is that internal or environmental factors?
Both, in fact. Okay, and there's a long list of environmental factors that we know affect the functioning of the brain. My pet favorite is high blood pressure, and I think it's and I'm going to use this opportunity to address that issue, because it's probably in our community, one of the biggest problems that affect the brain slowly and silently over many years, that impairs the function of the brain in the long term. If you have poor control of blood pressure, which causes damage to the blood vessels in the brain, and indirectly then obviously damages the brain itself.
Master Your Destiny on 99 FM.
Welcome, Sean, to the MYD show. We're so delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you. Hi. Hi.
Let's start off with your story. You've got an incredible story. You're somebody who's been through an incredible journey.
Yeah, it's last year was a sort of up and down roller coaster. You know, one day you're like, I'm fine, rehearsing for a show. The next day you're going for a scan. The next thing you know, you're in hospital. The next thing you know, okay, you've got something on your brainstem. It's not really something anyone really wants to hear, like on a Thursday night when you're ready to go out. The doctor's like, you can't go anywhere. We're booking you in. No.
What made you, before you go on from there, what made you go for the scan?
I was busy. I think I was busy rehearsing for a show, and I know that there's a lot of intense singing. So when I used to sing, I used to get these like blinding headaches that just would come from the back of my head, just come and go, and I found it really strange that they wouldn't go away. So I was like, okay, what's happening? And then I had an ear infection, and the left side of my face started going numb. I could still move it, but it was still numb. So the doctor was like, it happens sometimes in ear infection, and it's like your face can go numb or blah blah because of this and whatever nerve, doctor speak. I went through it. They took extra precaution while doing the operation. They had all sorts of wires connected to a computer while I was under, in my throat, like on my vocal cords, because I knew I was a singer. So what I said to them before was like, if anything, my legs can go, but like I still want to be able to sing afterwards. Don't know what I was thinking saying such thing because I don't know how I would have dealt with it. But the recovery after that really, I mean, it was pretty amazing. I was in ICU for 3 days, and then I went to the normal ward. I was there for about 4. I was in the hospital for about 6 days after my operation. Started walking like 4 days after that, and yeah, the recovery has just been phenomenal. I mean, the right side of this is weird now, the right side of my face was completely numb. I couldn't move it. Like somebody split it right in the middle. I couldn't move the right side of my face, but they said that is to be expected, and it got better and better and better. I still kind of feel it, that it's not 100%, but I don't think anyone who doesn't or hasn't seen me like all my life will really notice. It's amazing, like day to day, just sitting here talking, blinking, doing everything at the same time. You don't really think of those things until you have to think about not being able to do them again. Like I mean, before the offer, I'm like, okay, so if I can't walk, okay, I'll deal with that. But what if I can't move my arm, or what if I'm like blind, or it's you can't even imagine that. I mean, but that is still fine. That is kind of like better than facing your own mortality. That's kind of something that I had to also jump over, because one day you're fine, and then the next day they're like, you could die.
Master your destiny on 99 FM.
Once again, we do live in this part of the world where infections are quite rife, and this ranges from all sorts of infections, from parasites like tapeworms attacking the brain to various viruses, including the HIV virus, which also physically causes problems with the brain. So many different environmental issues, and then there are obviously internal factors that are just part of the aging brain. When we talk about diseases like dementia, particularly looking at Alzheimer's disease, which is basically a disease of abnormal protein that accumulates in the brain, and then generally causes abnormal functioning of the cells. And this is largely a phenomenon of the aging brain, and we see that even in really asymptomatic people, or basically older people who don't have signs of dementia. If you look at their brains macroscopically, you will find early signs of Alzheimer's in normal brains. So it's probably a part of normal aging as well. Okay. That is, in some patients is exaggerated and others not. So as you see, there's quite a myriad of things that causes problems with the brain growing older.
So what are the warning signs to look out for when it comes to the health of our brain?
There's a number of environmental things and sort of habitual things that we do to ourselves that really cause massive impact to the brain. Things like smoking, excessive alcohol, not taking your hypertensive medication, that causes untold injury to the brain. And if we all had our ways, we'd probably advise all patients to stop smoking, number one, or people to stop smoking, and then obviously take your blood pressure medication if you do have, because that's a huge problem here in this part of the world. The other thing is obviously take care of your brain and avoid the traumatic situations. Wear a helmet when you cycle, put your seatbelt on, and avoid head injuries. And as far as you can, avoid getting into fist fights and getting knocked out.
Master your destiny on 99 FM.